To play the blame game. Steinhoff's case is no different. Questions have been asked about how billionaire Christo Wiese and the entire Steinhoff board did not know what was going on.
These are the kind of people who we, as the public, believe know what they're doing when they're managing our money. It's not only Christo Wiese and the board and the auditors, it's analysts, investors, asset managers, the PIC, who was the second biggest shareholder in Steinhoff for a number of years.
So the government employee pension fund is a defined benefit model. Under a defined benefit scheme, the biggest risk that you face is that at the point in time when your employees have to retire, the money that's available may not be sufficient to meet the commitments that you've made. Then obviously somebody has to step in and top up whatever that deficit might be. And in this case, it happens to be the South African taxpayer.
If you think about widows and orphans and security guards, and I'm ex-security guard, and actually those people, they've got no means, even if it was 5,000 rand, they've got no means of recovering that 5,000 rand. It may be tiny amounts in absolute terms, but relative to what those people own, it's significant. There is a bit of an emotional connection to me that I know how it feels, and I know how difficult it is for them every day to try and make that day work. There were defenseless people who are sweeping the streets, work for municipality, and now they're caught up in the Steinhoff thing. And it was particularly for that reason that I stood up and I said, I'm going to the police, and I must give the police the evidence that I have been, together with the team, we have been saying there is something wrong here. So I felt that by going to the police, it would actually give us some retribution for the investors, but for South Africa.
On the first day that I was asked to take this position, I asked for a picture of the person who lost the most, the biggest loser. We couldn't find a picture, but that is the picture that I keep in my mind. And as long as there is hope that we can get to some return for that individual, those sets of individuals, we will not stop trying.
People and households lost money. My own father lost money, a significant amount of money. And so it was very clear that there were going to be significant consequences.
We had the unfortunate position that Mr. Jooste wasn't around at the time because he resigned.
Did Marcus Jooste, in your view, ever lie to you, mislead you, or do you think use you?
I do believe that there was a limited sharing of information from Mr. Jooste to myself. You must bear in mind that, at least in my view, this practice commenced a number of years ago. So therefore, if you grow that false profit every year, no person, no auditor, no analyst will certainly, just by looking at the numbers, tell you, but here's something that changes suddenly this year, here's false income. Because it started so long ago, and just every year it gets increased a little bit. From my side, I'm also deeply saddened with the events that happened at Steinhoff and all the money that was lost. Like the majority of people involved in trying to save this business. From my side, I also do not think I did anything deliberately wrong.
Ben Lachranji, Steinhoff's former CFO, was left on the lurch when Jooste Cotton disappeared.
And also how to fix it.
He was left to flounder in Parliament to face a series of questions to which he just didn't have answers.
Because many of these accounting firms not only aided and abetted state capture, but aided and abetted Marcus Jooste to create this fiction of a multi-billion-dollar company, which clearly was found on sand.
You can't get a one-sided corruption. There's got to be two sides. The money's got to flow. And it's got to come from somewhere. And it's got to go somewhere. So trust in our institutions starts eroding.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? You guys surviving? You ate your food? You ready to pay attention? You're about to get schooled. Okay, no. All right, guys. I know it's the Lincoln Youth Leadership Summit today, but we all know that this particular speaker is the main event. Is the main event. I'm about to introduce a speaker that I can only use verbiage such as hero, inspiring, ethical, human, empathetic, full of integrity, and now the breakout star of the Showmax documentary Steinheist to describe her. Yes, Claire. Yes. Okay. Bambe. Thank you. But before we get to the man of the hour, let me introduce myself. I am Sibulele Mafanya. Sibs at work, Sbuja when I used to be for the streets. Not anymore. I am a business analyst by profession with over decades worth of experience. Currently, I manage the business analysis team for the Africa business at MultiChoice. And no, the rumors are not true. I will not be elaborating any further. And to any CEOs in this session, if there are vacancies in your organization, I have my CV in the boot. We can meet in the parking lot after the session. But now, back to the main event. I'm here to introduce Mr. Zwelakhe Mnguni, an unreal and true manifestation of our ancestors' dreams. In every sense, the man represents all facets of the South African lived experience. From a previously disadvantaged background, to a security guard, to varsity, to climbing the corporate ladder, and being a co-founder of his own asset under management firm. Further to that, he can now claim to also be a breakout TV star on the Showmax documentary and get to discuss that for his masterclass. That is the South African influencer's dream, guys. Right? Have you guys read his bio? Did you guys take time to read his bio? If you didn't, I'm about to. All right. Okay. Zwelakhe Mnguni is the co-founder and chief investment officer of Benguela Global Fund Managers. He grew up in Sebokeng squatter camp in Johannesburg. And after school, he worked as a security guard for 4 years to save money to study at university. He is from humble beginnings and difficult circumstances, but that did not stop him from pursuing his dreams. Today, Mnguni is one of the founders of Benguela Global Fund Managers and currently oversees 7.2 billion in asset under management. After he completed, guys, it's not done. After he completed his BCom honors in financial management at Randse Afrikaans Universiteit. That's University of Johannesburg. Zwelakhe joined Cadus Asset Management, where he did short stints in various business units, including stockbroking, private equity, risk management, and specialized asset management. He joined Allen Gray in late 2002 and spent 4 years as an equity analyst. He later joined Stanlib as an equity analyst focused on telecommunications and technology. He then managed Stanlib's Global Science and Technology Fund and co-managed the Stanlib Value Fund. He then spent 3 years as head of equities and portfolio manager at Mergence Investment Managers until August 2013. Mnguni, as I said, is currently the co-founder of Benguela in late 2013 with his friend from Varsity Call, I think it's Givers? Givers, yes. Guys, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Mr. Zwelakhe Mnguni.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, Spoo, for the introduction. I think for me, today marks an end to a week of tyranny. I've been abused the whole week, chased around by the boss herself.
It's not true, it's not true.
So thank you very much, Spoo, for that gracious introduction. I think I'm significantly privileged to be standing in front of you, and certainly appreciate the initiative of Mr. Mali to continue to share knowledge and experiences about that would make us even better prepared for the future. So I tried to put together a presentation. I'm not good at presentations. I thought I'd talk. So I'll share some lessons from Steinhoff, and I need to be conscious of time as well. Did you say I've got how many? 20 minutes?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I've prepared some points to talk about on Steinhoff. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of battles around companies. The recent one was Transaction Capital. Again, not always invested in the stocks, but sometimes I see myself as somebody who's coming from a background that requires me to also stand up for people who cannot stand for themselves. So you find that there are people whose money are invested through pension funds, provident funds, and we come across evidence that suggests that companies are doing things that are inappropriate. And then we're not involved there. And I'm like, these are my people. So I belong there. You know, we can live up here in the suburbs, but I belong to the township. So I thought I'd share some thoughts about Steinhoff, but also talk about whether it is the only incident that we have in the market, but also just maybe throw something to say, does governance work? Do people pay attention to it or not? So I'll share briefly about Benguela. I mean, the business was founded in 2013. The whole mission was and I'll show you in a picture. We actually wanted to have a worldwide investment management firm that is based in South Africa. At a time when we started, many firms were actually foreign firms that were managing local money. Again, coming from the township, knowing that the people who sweep the streets are South Africans, their money gets shipped overseas, taxes get paid there, CSI is done there, and jobs are created there. And why can't we do it? We're smart enough as South Africans to be able to do that. So we are a business that is in the investment space, focused on quality, and I'll give a bit more color on quality. But most importantly, being risk conscious, treating clients' money as if it's our own at all times. So this is the history of the business. I'm not going to go through that. Just highlighting that, you know, what I was talking about, that the narrative was that you had foreign talent for local investments. And what we said, you want local talent for global investing. And that way you can create jobs here, you can do CSI, you can do a whole lot of things. So these are some of the things that Benguela is doing on an ongoing basis. So like I said, I had a friend say to me this week to say, there is a child that's won a tennis competition, they want to go overseas, and we need donations. My response was that my donations go to people in the township, the kids in the townships, especially rural townships. That's where the need is. You telling me about people who are paying 150, 200,000 rand school fees, and they need a donation. I'd rather convert my money there. So these are some of the things that we do, and I continue to be part of that story to say we need to make a difference in society. So education being one of them. The second thing is that we give bursaries as a firm to say we want to make change. And everybody comes out and say we give bursaries and do all sorts of things. But I think the ultimate thing is that we wanted to be able to give bursaries to young black females. You know, for 2,000 years, men have dominated this planet and women have been held back. How about we try and empower them to actually move forward? So you'll see that most of the time, the bursaries go to the females at Benguela, and that's part of a journey. So this would be our board. So there's chairman and 4 independent non-executives. Again, fantastic people, committed to governance, very well qualified. Okay, so we have been recognized by the industry in the last 4 or 5 years, and certainly it's something that we are proud of, but the story doesn't end there. The story is now about you. Just to highlight, I mean, I spoke about quality to say, you know, we're a quality manager. There are many people who talk about investing, and there are all sorts of things that are being told. When investing gets detached from the basics, the fundamental things that make a business work, actually it can go very, very wrong. So what this we use this as an anchor to say what are the things that drive businesses. So if a business doesn't meet the cost of capital on a sustained basis, actually that business is not going to survive. If the business is overly indebted, that's not going to survive. If a business goes and make acquisitions or invests recklessly with shareholders' money, that's not going to survive. The ESG risk, if the governance is not there, if they are damaging to the environment, that's not going to work. Execution, if the management doesn't do what they are paid to do, that's not going to work. And then the market price risk is that being aware that we could actually have a frothy environment. And I can tell you Steinhoff failed all of these things. So, so I'm just running through the Steinhoff case studies. There were findings about Steinhoff, and I'm not going to run through everything. Hopefully you get the electronic version of this presentation. But the claim is that there was a group of executives who worked together to create fictitious transactions, and they increased income and lowered expenses. And also they did say that the transactions were complex, and you know that the report is not yet public, but they held it back because it's got some implications against some of the key individuals. So the bottom line is that this is a mess. This is a mess. It can't be a group of executives. This is just a mess. So you need to ask yourself what was the environment? You had the board members who were actually complicit in a way because they closed one eye. I mean, you're a chairman. You have a business that is valued, let's say, at 26 billion, and it gets bought from you for 76. You become super rich. So, and how are you gonna rock the boat with this guy that's made you so rich? You know, you become compromised. So I think that was one of the factors. So you also had two governance structures where the chairman of the supervisory board was not involved in the management board. So you can't have the two boards sitting together and actually cross-question. So information flow gets managed, and who's involved is the CEO. So that was also a problem. You also had an incentive model that was focused on actually rewarding growth. So instead of rewarding the overall success of the business, I heard there was a people manager here, people officer. You need to have those type of people in the board to actually make it work, because then you get perspectives of what's happening on the ground rather than just having your ideas about it. You also had situations where it was a boys' club, you know, no female, we're gonna do our thing. We are accountants, we're the smartest guys. You need a bit of humility in life, and then maybe a lot of it in life. So, and you also had all these guys having the actions that suggested that they don't care about governance. So you have People are pointing their kids into the board. The one is leaving and then says, okay, I've got a daughter, come in. I mean, the rest of us have to compete for positions, any position that we go for. So that was an enabling environment. Then you had auditors who had worked with these people for a long time. Right? So there had been a number of engagements that we had. So I had meetings with Christo Wiese to tell him about the related party transactions. Right? Say, if you go back at the back of the notes, there were related party transactions that were being disclosed, but they thought in a 100 billion rand business, 80 million rand doesn't matter, but it's a signal. Right? It says we can deal with ourselves. 80 million rand is a lot of money. Right? And he was so convinced that Marcus Jooste is so smart, he's going to take him places. And remember what was happening at the time. There was also the Zuma government that was in South Africa, and everybody was saying he's going to collapse the country and let's get our money out. And I think Marcus Jooste saw that gap and he maximized on it. And he caught the best of the best. GT Ferreira, all the big guys, the guys that started First Rand, they were all in. The guys that started PSG, they were all in. And the reason was he basically saw that everybody's worried about how do we get our money out of South Africa. And then he went out and, because chief executives want remuneration. And you can get more remuneration by increasing the size of your business. And as you increase it, you get paid more. And that's what he did. He ran around looking for businesses to buy, and I'll show you in a slide what lots of acquisitions. But the one thing that also bothered me, like when we were talking to Christo Wiese, I said, look at this business. This is the cash earnings. Right, so, and I kept updating this as over time. So this is the cash earnings. So this thing, you had 1, 2, 3 times that it generated cash profit. Any other time, you get in the accounting earnings going. Brokers were writing, this is a growth stock, this is amazing. And it was amazing indeed. And the reason why I put a witch there was because, no, honestly, this is the presentation I've given to clients like prior to the collapse. So I kept updating it. There is a witch here that is somehow convincing people that it is okay that earnings grow and then you don't generate any cash, So the witchcraft. And we all get taught that the value of a business is the present value of future cash flows. We all get taught that. The thing is not generating free cash flows. Why does it have value? So it's a basic things that we don't take seriously. Another thing I had looked at, and I also showed this to Christo Wiese, said, actually, there's a very simple thing. I earn 100 rand, I spend 150. How? Every month, like every year, I'm spending more than them. At some point, it's got to catch up with me. And what happens is, that means I'm borrowing money every year to plug the gap, right? So these are the companies, again, that was a presentation I was doing back then. I said, look at Steinhoff, what they generate. They basically use, for every 100 rand, they use 300 rand. How do you live like that, And these are basic things. So we wrote in December 2016 when they tried to buy ShopRite. We said, it doesn't make sense, we oppose this, and we actually published it to clients and said, this doesn't work. So that was Steinhoff, and I'll show you some of the things. If you look at I think we've got the wrong presentation, but fine. So if you look at whether Steinhoff is the only company that has those type of issues. I mean, you look just on governance. So there are lots of markets where the companies, and I used a sample globally, and I said, how many of these companies actually have poor governance scores? So you find that in markets like Sweden, very high, markets like United States, very high. So when you're an investor, you don't actually need to look further than that. The first thing I look for when I take an annual report is I look for the actual remuneration summary. Wow, how are these guys paid? Because that's what they're going to go for. They're going to run around. If you say they must do growth, they're going to chase growth. If you say safety, you'll see that less people will die in the mines when safety is included in their remuneration. Somehow. So management is driven by remuneration, and you have to pay attention to that. And you cannot have the right remuneration model unless you have the good governance structure. So do markets pay attention to governance? They do. So again, what I did here, this is not a causality study, this is a correlation study, and I think it's important that I differentiate that, just so that I show that I did study statistics a bit. So what you are seeing here is the relationship between the 5-year share price performance and the governance level, the level of governance. So there is a relationship there that seems to be pointing towards the more governance that we are seeing, the better the performance of the companies. And it makes sense, right? So if you have a board that is independent, a board that can manage companies or exercise oversight about ethics and everything within the business, it becomes a lot more effective towards delivering on the goals and objectives of the investors. Another thing I wanted to highlight was just to show you that markets do pay attention to the cost of capital. So companies that have low ESG have the highest cost of capital compared to companies that have high ESG. Right? So whatever we can say, markets do pay attention to it. And this now, a study that was done by MSCI, this would be a regression models. Again, you can see in emerging markets, the extent to which the markets price the governance varies, but it's quite a critical thing. So these things about ESG investing are actually critical for us to actually price capital. It's not just a thing that we do for fun. So within governance and ESG and all those things, what you want to see is board independence is critical. So you want to know that the board members are independent. So as you have more independent board members, your ESG outcomes get better. Remember, we said ESG, you have lower cost of capital. So by increasing board independence, you increase your ESG scores. And you increase your ESG scores, you could bring your cost of capital down. So this is reality, right? So this is not a theory that Christoph Wiese thought it was. So if you look at another thing that I looked at was, if you consider companies that improve in governance versus companies that deteriorate in governance, have the share prices performances been different? And what you can see is that over 3 years and over 5 years, the performance has been better. The improvers are actually doing better. And what you can see is there is a relationship. The extent of the improvement gives you a sense. But so if you just say the deteriorators did 2%, and you can see the improvers did 7%, that just gives you a 5% opportunity of outperformance if you are investing. So you could do better by 5% by just saying, I want guys that are improving in governance. So this is just a perspective of board independence, improvers by different margins. Because of the sample sizes, I just put everybody in, but I think you have to pay attention to the US in particular. It's good. It had like 930, 940 companies in it. So you can see that the improvers actually do better in terms of share price performance. So this is just the improvers minus the deteriorators, just gives you the gap between the performances. So how do we use this information at Benguela? So what we say is that if we are selecting stocks, if you have low governance, you have low independence, you have low ESG, we will charge you a higher cost of capital because we know that markets are taking that into account. If you also have low ESG, we want a higher margin of safety if we are to invest in your business. And when we allocate capital, we'll say 2 companies, one is high ESG, the other one is low ESG, exactly the same upside. We give more money to the company that's got high ESG. So again, that's something that we use. It's worked wonders for us. So in South Africa, there's been EOH. We are not in EOH. Caught many clever people. Didn't catch the security guard. And then you had this Tongat. Caught many clever people. Didn't catch us. You had Transaction Capital. Didn't catch us. Why? Because ESG does matter, governance does matter. The Steinhoff situation is not unique. There are many, many companies out there that are doing a lot of things that are inappropriate and where chairmen are compromised or the lack of diversity. It's things that we take for granted. It's okay, it's just look at the qualifications. These are men that are proven. What about women that are proven that are not in these kind of positions? We are not making an effort to try and make a transition, right? And it becomes acceptable. So we have to be conscious of that. And you guys are leaders, whether today or tomorrow. At the end of the day, you are leaders. And this is something that we have to embed into our systems and processes to say we need to do better because there are rewards for a business that is practicing good governance. So just highlighting some of the lessons, what you can see is that if you look at the first lessons, that the financial and regulatory compliance, those things actually matter as leading indicators. But there's a whole lot of things, that mindset, where you go and you tell Christoph Wiese and say, we are uncomfortable. There's a tax situation that in 2015, I said, you've got a tax situation, Steinhoff operates in a 28% tax jurisdiction. Marcus Jooste says he'll maintain 15% tax forever. How does he do that? Christoph Wiese says, do you know that Marcus Jooste used to work for SARS? He knows what he's doing. In other words, what are you talking about? You didn't work for SARS, you don't know anything, right? And those are indicators. So the reports and everything, so you have to take those things into account. When I met Marcus Jooste the first time I was at Allen Gray, it was probably 2002, 2003. He used to wear suits, ties, everything was like very professional. When he moved overseas, he was buying businesses overseas. He used to come to the results in a half-open white shirt. And if you ask a question that is sensitive, he's like, not again. Next. You know, you look at that situation from outside, it's a sign. Right? Don't take it for granted, it's a sign. Because it just says that if you can do that to us as investors, what happens at the office? He's not going to listen to anybody. So you have to keep that in mind. You also have to look at cash profit is what is critical. It's not the accounting profit. Accounting has got so many things. The leases have changed and all this. The guys must make profit, and ultimately that's cash profit, free cash flow. That's a thing that matters. And you also have to know that people like Christoph Wiese, I don't think he was involved in the corruption, but he was the chairman of this big company, and he had to keep that status. I mean, he was getting paid in the other presentation I had, like he was getting paid 2 million euros for being a chairman. For being a chairman, 2 million euros. So Marcus Jooste was making between 5 and 6 million euros a year. Why would he want to give up that? You know, do anything and everything possible. And they had share option schemes worth 2 billion rands. When the share, and I went to Christo Wiese about it as well. When the share options matured and they were not meeting the target, what they did is the board extended the time frame, because share options have to lapse after a certain, you've met the criteria for this period. If you haven't met the criteria, they lapse. What they did, they extended them by 3 months. Guess what they did? They went and bought Conforama. And they met that criterion, backdated the starting date of consolidation. You know, this is accounting, right? So you backdate the starting point, and then you account for it. Now it's part of your numbers. And like the guys tick a box, they've made their 2 billion rand share options. So those are some of the things that you have to pay attention to. So you also have to do your own research. So brokers wrote amazing reports. This is the, what did they say? They said performing into inflation, all sorts of stories that the brokers have a way of communicating, making things exciting. You know, you can see the big thing about AI now. It's very exciting. You read a broker report, you're like, I'm getting left behind. The world is going to change. It also was about to change in 2000, you know, and so you also have to look at, don't ignore the softer things. It's quite critical. And I actually attend meetings intentionally to go listen. I listen even to the tone of the voice, to say, did his voice go squeaky when he was saying, you know, because he doesn't want, like, you touch him in my studio now. It's like, so you ask him a question, it's like a sensitive thing. It's like, maybe you know something. So you need to be aware those little things do matter. It's all about governance. Governance is a complicated thing, but it's also a simple thing. You use the numbers on one side to see if they point you in a certain direction. But then engage management, and that's the story of Steinhoff, and I'll take questions.
Thank you very much. This is very inspiring. I am Ngobile Mkhize. I work for Melville Douglas Asset Management as a part of the Global Impact Fund. So my question is straightforward and simple. There are many young black women who are studying your corporate finance and investments, yet the face remains white and old. So breaking into these spaces becomes difficult, and there aren't as many asset management firms such as yours that give young women the opportunities. So while we make it into this, the predominantly white-owned and managed firms, how would you advise us to set ourselves apart to still excel despite the structural setting of these asset management firms? Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I think the first thing is, as women, you need to want it very badly. Right? You know, men have created things, and I mean, I'm a man, but I always say at home and say that had my grandmother and my mother been allowed to run the family, I would have never been a security guard. And that's a message to say. So you have to want it badly as women. The people are going to put obstruction. They're going to do all sorts of things to try and label you and do all sorts of things. You have to keep fighting. Right? So the fact that, I mean, I've gone through a very hard thing, like when you work as a security guard, firstly, people look down on you. Secondly, I was working with people who were from apartheid, who were my superiors, and actually, I had to come up with a strategy of how do I manage people. So you have to manage upwards, right? So you won't believe that in my last first year as a security guard. So I was studying at Lyceum College through correspondence during the day. And in the evenings I go to work, I was supposed to work. I had convinced these guys, because they're white guys, they would take their money and go chow it at month end. I had like a strict plan. And I was able to go to work and sleep and be guarded by the white guy who was my boss, actually. At 4 o'clock, comes and wakes me up and says, listen, it's about time, wake up. How did I do that? Is because I managed him upwards. I said, you know, I'm not going to fight with you. My battle is bigger. I'm not going to fight this little battle about security guards. And even though I was more qualified than him, I actually didn't fight that battle there. So as women, you have to also fight your battle and manage upwards. And sometimes you have to see, if I fight this battle, am I going to win it? Yeah. So if I go and rock the boat with that white guy, and I'm trying to show him that I've got bigger plans. It was my secret. Nobody knew that I was saving up to go to university. It was my secret. And if I had made it, if I had upset him, he would have pushed me out. And I was getting paid a lot of money compared to where I started. And I had to keep that and say, I'll fight back later. And one thing I did is I went back after I graduated. I went back and I said to them, I've graduated. I just wanted to say to you guys, thank you. Right? So you also need to realize that you are a representation of women who've been for 2,000 years have been held back. If 100 women stand up and say, we're going to fight this battle, we're going to break through the ceiling, I'm sure 50 will make it. That 50 could be role models. So I felt that I was the role model for the kids who were from the squatter camp, kids from the townships, that you can make it. And I wanted to fight for that. And that's all that defines my life today.
Brown jacket.
Cool, thanks. So mine is quite short. Can you just share your view around transaction capital and what is hiding in the closet?
Yeah.
So I have a recording where, because I got clever as well over time, that record these conversations. I had a hot debate about these guys where the accounting, it's all about accounting sometimes, you know? And you have to ask yourself, is there an incentive for guys to crook the accounting? So what they did is they had this SA Taxi Finance that was actually underperforming, and they were scared to impair their loans. So I haven't received money for 90 days. Typically, you have to start reducing the value of the loan. What they do is they say refinance. The loan is alive in its entirety again, and then you pretend like you collecting the money. You're not gonna collect money. Maybe that person pays you 1 month, and it's like, hey, he paid us. So we had a hectic debate. I had the same thing with Capitec as well. We had a debate, and the guys wouldn't change the accounting. And later they came back and said, oh, we have to impair SA Taxi Finance. Again, governance, the top guys were relaxed and they were feeling comfortable. So it's accounting plus governance. That was what was happening. I don't trust their numbers. I don't trust them. And I'll never invest in transaction capital because I've got a responsibility to clients. And I might miss out on the stock that rallies. It is horrible that you buy into a thing and you know that the numbers don't make sense there. So we had the same fight with Capitec years ago, and about them issuing the loans, but they were doing something else. They would take an extra initiation fees, and then they'd report higher revenue. And You know, there is a lot of things that are happening in the country. You hear about the government is dodgy, these guys, you don't know what's happening in the corporate. And it's getting suppressed. And the JSE, for example, they've got lots of letters that are wrote to them. And the response was often, it says, we have investigated, this falls out of our jurisdiction. We have investigated, we didn't find, they didn't break any rules. I'm like, you can see the guys, the numbers don't make sense. It says, but they didn't break any rules. So it's a system that is shielding those guys, because JSE, if JSE kicks them out, they're not getting fees. Again, you're in the Christo Visa situation. You rock the boat and then there's no money coming in, you're no longer getting 2 million euros. That's essentially what happened.
I wanted to ask you, my name is Konani, and I'm in project management as an intern at an IT company down the road. Just your advice on how to develop business acumen, or how to understand, the business itself, how it, just those elements of business acumen.
Look, something that I'll never talk about is I've started 4 businesses, started, operated, and ran 4 businesses. So I've had a trucking company, I've had industrial tools companies, I've had a disposable nappy companies, and sometimes you have to go in and lose your shirt before you get that business acumen. So, and then you start appreciating cash flow. So I think there's a lot that we can get from reading. And I often read biographies when CEOs or after the collapse of a business. I want to go read that journalist that writes about what happened in the meeting. And because now the executives are reporting each other and say, in that meeting he said this. And I'm like, okay, this is something I must look for next time, okay? So you need to be reading about those things, but you also have to try and put money in a small business. It doesn't have to be anything glamorous. I mean, I had nappies, So at the end of the day, you pick so much more from just sitting in a meeting and debating why must you spend this money, why shouldn't you spend money? Thank you.
Black jacket.
My name is Joseph Maseko. I think, first of all, a big fan of your work. I love listening to your analysis on power, business, and I think with not a guy who has no background in finance, but I've learned a lot of capital acumen just listening to your analysis. So my question is on ESG matrices. Do you have ESG matrices, particularly that measure the social and environmental side? And how do those matrices actually influence the bottom line? In the presentation, you mentioned that businesses that are ESG, where you have a higher rating, you invest more in those businesses. But do you have matrices that actually prove that those companies actually contribute bigger to the bottom line than a company that's, let's say, ESG negative or lower down the scale?
Absolutely. So we've run 180 questionnaire, or we've got 180 questions data points that we look at on any company. So, when we started, the ESG data was very spotty globally. It's become a lot better. Companies have been forced to report on ESG, and we are getting that data. So on environmental issues, I mean, it's sometimes looking at how much water does a company use to generate the same amount of revenue or the same amount of output. So if you have companies that are in the coal sector, they have to wash the coal. For the same amount of a ton of coal, why does the other one use more water? That could be a point that we're going to debate with management. You're using more water than your peers. Why? Because that's not your water. It's a water table that belongs to everybody, to society. You have to pay attention to that. But you also have situations where, in terms of social, companies take the workers live in squalor around the mines, for example, and they never actually do anything about it because the profits go to the shareholders, and where the shareholders, often in mining, sit in London, and they are actually extracting here, like leave as little as possible, take it home. Again, those are the things that we look for. So the agenda in the management team, we look at that. We look at the pay gaps. It's social issues. So the lowest paid person versus the highest paid person. Sometimes you get 100 times. So lowest paid person versus the highest paid person 100 times. I mean, really? One guy is equivalent to 100 people? So there is a whole lot of matrices, and I'm happy that if one day we have an opportunity, we could have something at the office, and I can just run you through the data that we gather around companies. So all these companies that I mentioned here, that I think it was 1,300. The total 1,300, I pulled the data for all of them. Any direction I want. Do they have a policy on governance? Do they have a policy on not having child labor? Those type of things. We have like quite a detailed process.
We are mindful of time. You are third on the list. You are first. Also, I don't know if you guys got it. He just invited us to his company.
Hi, sir. I'm Tlamelo Mosalayesi. I'm an independent specialist I look at opportunities in linked investments. So my question is to you, like you mentioned now with cases like Capitec, where they're able to manipulate their TER and TIC for higher returns, I wanted to ask you, with Steinhoff being able to go for so long with their witchcraft as well, what are your thoughts on the impact that FSCA and the Prudential Authority have, and are you satisfied with their level of regulatory enforcement?
So you've used hectic words, and don't forget I was security guard, so I don't understand this. TIC, TR, those type of things. But I think the guys, you have to realize the system is designed. The first thing that the CA or SICA will do is say, how big is the damage going to happen here? Because if you admit, it might say, this is the culture. So you have to try and make it go away sometimes if it's too big. If it's a small thing, this guy lied about this, is like, take him off, suspended as a CA. There are bigger things that are happening. Marcus Jooste, how long did it take for him for SICA to actually suspend him? Why was he not suspended? So the system is designed to protect the executives. But also, let us not underestimate the impact of having money to pay the lawyers. I mean, I've been threatened so many times. So every time we wrote a letter to any company, it goes through 2 legal companies. So, because you have to say it in a way that it is not accusatory, because that's what they want. They want you to say, you guys are thieves, and says, yes, we silence this little thing here, you know? And that's what they'll do. So if you don't play well, they'll silence you, including the JSC, including the SICA. They try and make sure that they protect each other to some extent. Anything that will damage. Why is the ANC in trouble that it is? Because it's like, let's protect it, guys. We're in this together. You know, we all eating. What's the problem? You know, and at a later stage, the thing blows out. You get 40% in the elections. So it happens until it cannot be sustained.
I think it is. My name is Rabetswa, and I'm an attorney, a corporate attorney. When I watched the documentary, it immediately made me think of Enron in America. Corporate governance is used as a buzzword, and I think that's the first mistake. It should be something that's legislated. It should be something that is part of the Companies Act or part of some act, and it has to be there as something that people are obligated to follow and answer to. And my question now is that shareholder activism has become a big important thing. We see that in AGMs where shareholders have very valid points that they're raising. And I just wanted to check with you, institutional investors, fund managers, like what do you guys do? How can you guys stand up to make sure that these listed companies are held accountable? These accounting irregularities are like shined light on and then stopped, because ultimately they are liable to the public and there should be some sort of standard that's maintained. So yeah, sorry, thanks.
You're the wrong attorney. So you're not going to be briefed. The truth is, some managers, remember the system, or like I say, I met Marcus yesterday when I was at Allen Gray. Right? When you're a big fund manager, companies come to you and you can ask them questions. This is not the privilege that's available to anybody. So are you going to turn around and say to them, hey guys, why are you doing this? Because they're like, we don't like you anymore. We're not going to engage with you anymore. You're exposing us, right? So the failures that you're talking about persist because the asset managers, especially in South Africa, the large asset managers, they're not going to fight with management, right? And we made it a point that we will fight, and we've got. And I said, if they kill me, let them kill me, because these are people. The guys are sweeping at Gandhi Square. That's their money. So there is that element where we don't have the selflessness. Right, so we've become selfish. If you go into the 80s, the 70s, what did people do? They went to Tanzania, to Uganda, wherever, left the country, left the comfort of their homes to go train, to come in with the hope of fighting for liberation. Today, it's completely different. It's like, what am I eating? You know, why would I sacrifice the comforts? So it's the same thing that's happening in the asset management space. The big guys have had the opportunity and the privilege. Why would they give it up? So the big pension funds are only starting now to say, fund managers, we want you to report on what you've done about the accounting issues, the corruption, and it's a long journey. We're not there yet. But the big guys are a big disappointment.
Hi, so my name is Libwani. I'm in the legal sector. I specialize in immigration law. I think just with the Steenhoff case, every industry can learn from it and kind of leverage off of what has happened. My question to you is what has Benguela done, and how can other companies leverage off of this situation to get the clients or the stakeholders and rebuild that trust from your end?
I'd say, from what we've done, you know, the Capitec CFO called us a little Jack Russell, because we always make sure that we communicate to the companies the issues, but then we share the information in the industry. We haven't had support. I can tell you, we've tried where we say, everybody, this is going wrong at Transaction Capital. Can we all gang up together and get this management out? People are like, no response. So it's a challenge, but I do think that other companies, remember, are they doing it for the right reasons? Or are they just trying to, as long as we don't get caught, you know, we must just eat and not not get caught. There is an element of that I don't think people are committed to governance. These companies, I mean, there's big remuneration involved in these companies. And it takes you from a level where you are like you and me to a level where you could go live in London, your kids are at school in Switzerland and those stuff. So there is a big problem that you need to change the law. I think you need to change the law that says if you are not compliant with governance, you must go to jail. Or if something is found, arrest Marcus Jooste and Christo Wiese together. Yes. Now it's Marcus Jooste, and even when I laid the criminal charges against him, I knew that Christo Wiese was gonna fight hard if I included him in the charges. So I went for Marcus Jooste first, and then Ben Legranji. And you know, Marcus Jooste apparently is gone. So Ben was arrested this week on Wednesday. So I got the message from police that he got arrested and he appeared, I think, on Thursday. But it's a complicated system. It's a very complicated system.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
It's the last.
Okay.
It's the last one. I'm not threatening. I'm just saying it's the last. It's the last question. Also, has anyone seen Marcus Jooste's funeral?
Thanks. So strict.
I am not, sir.
You sound strict. I think just like following on the ESG reports for all those different companies, I just had a thought while we were talking about it, and the thought is around like obviously changing the target, especially where profitability is concerned. Like I was thinking along the lines of an ESG influence profit model, and I'm sure you guys have already thought about such things. And I think my question goes to you as do we have things to put in place to have like to change sort of the target? Because I think if we have e.g. a target that we look at from all these companies saying how many families have you like affected in a positive way as part of their profitability model within the institution or the company, then in that way everybody maximizing for and positive net effect on families is just good for all around both the company and the family working at that company. And I think this is just like, you know, a way of sort of changing, not trying to fit to sort of a capitalist model, if you may, but also just introduce things like Ubuntu in the profit model. I mean, it's all like high level and very like, you know, vague, what I'm saying, but I think the idea here is sort of changing the goals so that these companies can focus on, I guess, good goals as opposed to, you know, like we all know the goals that like all these companies are striving for, and they could do better in other areas. And I think if we make that the target, we have a stronger chance of improving, I guess, the whole, you know, conduct around business, because we have also families. I think Steenhoff is just like an example of how many individuals in South Africa are doing the same thing of getting $100 but living on 300, but still thinking that they, like, you know, their head is above water, because that's what maybe the bank is telling them, because they could just easily, you know, sub that, like, you know, that difference. And you'll be surprised of how many families are actually relying on pensions at the end. I mean, like, if I'm not meaning to put my family out there, but my mother like had to quit, you know, for her teaching to sort of get that paper and then, you know, sort out a couple of things. But now she was left with sitting with nothing, you know. But like, it's one of those things where, like, in hindsight, I mean, we've recovered from that, but in hindsight, I think if we had like those better systems in place to sort of manage funds and everything around it. So yeah.
Look, I think the points you're making are valid, but it's a system. You have to change the whole world to be able to get that right. I think the Europeans have started to leak into their performance systems, ESG factors. But I think many other companies could do that Like in South Africa, we could do that and actually, but we don't have the legislation. You know, the whole thing about the constitution, this is a special constitution. This constitution basically says they can take you to court. You are trying to force them to do something that is not. Is it law? It's not law. Or is it moral? Oh, okay, I mean, your moral perspective may not be the same as mine, and thank you, I'm out of it. So you're gonna require a big change. I mean, you know how long it took for the JSE to say compliance with King Code